Hello and welcome to this tutorial on Lokalise. Today we are going to discuss how to get started with Angular i18n using the built-in module. So we are going to use Angular 15, which is the latest version at the time of recording this video. You can also find the textual version of this tutorial on Lokalise blog, so the link will be available in the description. Alright, so first things first, we will need to install the command line interface for Angular, so well, please do that before proceeding, and then we should create a new Angular application and we are going to add the Lokalise package. Alright, so I'm going to create a new app. I'm not going to use the routing yet, but we're going to discuss routing separately. Well, I'm going to use CSS, and now it is going to install the packages, so, well, I'm going to pause the recording for a moment. Okay, welcome back, so let's proceed to this directory and let's make sure that our application can be opened successfully, so it should be automatically opened in the browser, and well, we can see that it works just fine. Alright, next we are going to install this Lokalise package that was introduced in Angular 9. So that's a very versatile package that can cover all our needs. And then we should make some changes to this Angular JSON file. It's very important. So here inside projects and then the name of your project, you should add a new section that is called i18n. And then we should provide the source locale. So that's going to be a default locale of your application. And then you should provide the locales key, and so this key should contain all additional locales that I would like to support. So translation is going to live inside the locale messages ru.xlf file. So that's thing number one. And thing number two, well, it's not mandatory, but I will do that. So here under the build section inside the options, let's say Lokalise is true, because I would like to automatically build all variants of my application for all the locales. But of course you can adjust this config as explained in the docs. And also I would like to report all the missing translation and set it to error. So if we don't have some kind of a translation available for the app, we're going to get an error. Alright, so that's pretty much it. Now let's get started with the actual translation, and well, in order to mark some text for translation, you should use the i18n attribute. So for example, let's open app and then find this app component. Let's delete everything and let's provide the following text. So that's just an ordinary text, but as you can see, we have marked it for translation using this attribute. So that's a special attribute that is recognized by the Lokalise package. And during compilation, it is going to be removed. And so the tag's content, it will be replaced with the proper translation. You can actually provide some metadata for this attribute. So for example, something like that. And this metadata will be available inside the translation file. And you can also provide the meaning for this translation, just like this. So I'm explaining that, well, it appears in the main header, and that's like a description for this translation that can be used by the translator who is going to work on this text, for example. Now the question is, where do we store our translations? And well, usually they live inside the i18n folder or the locale folder, and as we've already discussed, we will use the locale folder, but we should not create those files manually. So we can use a special tool that is called extract i18n. Well, previously it was called i18n, but now this tool is renamed, and it can create the base translation file for us, and we're going to stick to the XLIFF 1.2 format, but there are additional formats that you can employ. Then we should actually find the extract section here in this Angular JSON file, and let's say that, well, our format is going to be XLIFF, so that's XLIFF basically 1.2, and the output path should be source and then locale. So that's our directory to store translations. Basically, that's it. And now once you're ready, you can proceed to the terminal and say ng extract i18n. And it is going to detect all the texts that were marked for translation, and it should, well, extract those texts properly for you, which is really, really nice. Okay, so we can see that here is a new directory, and this messages.xlf is the base translation file with English translations, and so, well, here are some important pieces of this file. So this trans unit, it's the tag containing a single translation, and this ID is the identifier. It has a special meaning. So this tool actually generates the ID for us. Therefore, you should not modify this ID here inside this file, and we're going to discuss this ID in greater detail a bit later. Then here you can find the source text. Then you can see the context group, and it explains where exactly you can find this translation. And finally, we can see there are two nodes that contain the description and the meaning that we have provided. Basically, that's it. And now we can, copy this file and paste it here, and we should give it a name, for example, messages.ru, so it's going to contain Russian translations. So the name should be similar to the one that you have specified here in this config. And in order to translate something, you should just add a target tag right under the source part. So here is our translation. Great job. Also, it might be a good idea to specify the target language for the file. So let's add a new attribute here called target language and provide this locale code. Basically, that's it. So you don't need to modify the ID or anything like that. You just provide the target, and then you should be good to go. But yeah, unfortunately, we should provide some additional configuration. Here it is, and let's find the configurations part. And we should provide a special configuration for this locale, because I would like to serve the application in, two different variants. So let's say that we are using this RU locale, and then let's find this serve part. So here it is, and under the serve part for the configurations, we should say that it's going to be RU, and then the browser target should be this one. So let's copy it, but we should also say RU, so that we run this application in development and we use this RU locale, and you can provide other configurations for other locales as needed. And now when serving the application, you should actually provide the following configuration key and provide the name of your configuration, which should be RU. Alright, awesome. So we can see that the text was translated into Russian locale properly. Great job. Well, the next thing that I would like to discuss is those IDs, because I've already mentioned that those IDs are, they have special meanings and they are unique, and the extract i18n tool generates them based on the combination of the source text and the meaning. And it means that if you change the meaning or the translation source, then the ID is going to change as well. So for example, let's say hello everyone, and what it means is we can now rerun this extraction tool, and you can see that the ID is going to change. You see, it was changed automatically for us. But now the problem is that if we serve the application with the Russian locale, we're going to get an error, because, well, the IDs do not match. Here we have this ID, but here the ID is, totally different, and you can see it says that we cannot find this ID for the target locale. And so we cannot compile anything. And in order to fix this problem, you should update the ID here as well, save the file, and now everything should be compiled. So, well, as you can understand, having automatically generated IDs is not usually convenient. Therefore, you can provide a custom ID by using those @ characters and then providing this ID here. And so once you rerun the tool, by the way, note that it tries to search for this new ID right away. So let's perform the extraction once again, and it should update our ID to welcome. So now this ID is, hard-coded, and it should not change based on this text or on the meaning. So now we can see welcome, and don't forget to update it here. And actually, let's also update the source here because we've modified it. And let's update our translation. So that's how you can work with those IDs. The next question is, how do we translate attributes? Because, for example, I might have a link to my portfolio. So we know that adding this attribute allows us to translate this text. But what about those two guys? Because, well, probably for the Russian locale, the link should be changed and the title should be changed as well. And in order to translate those attributes, you just provide the i18n attribute. But, well, after the dash, you specify what should be translated. So href and the title, those should be translated for us. And after, well, performing those changes, well, you know the drill. Let's copy those new translation units. So there should be 3 units, and then you just provide the target for every unit. So here, for example, I would say not en US, but maybe ru. Then let's copy this guy. So that's going to be my portfolio. And finally, that's the title for the link, and we're going to translate it as well. And you can serve this application once again. All right, and now we can see that this thing is translated as well. Great job. Now let's see how to perform a pluralization. So for example, let's suppose that we would like to display how many tasks the user has. So, well, let's use the following construct. So the tasks count is the variable, then plural is basically the name of the ICU expression, and ICU is a special message format that we are using here. And then we are providing different options. So this option is used when there are no tasks, then when we have one task, and then we are covering all other scenarios. Also, let's not forget to create this tasks count inside the app component TS right here. So we can get rid of this title, and then you can extract this thing once again, and it should be extracted properly. You can actually see there are 2 different translation units, and so the first translation unit is for this span tag itself, and it simply contains this ICU expression. And the second translation unit for the actual pluralization. So make sure to copy both of those translation units. The first translation unit, we should not modify it anyhow, actually. So we can simply say target here and target here, because, well, it should not be translated in any way. But as for this guy, we should perform Russian translation. Why? Well, because pluralization rules in Russian is a bit more complex. So I'm going to cover all potential cases when there are no tasks, when there are 1 task, or maybe 101 tasks, etc., etc. Then when we have few tasks, and when we have many tasks. So all those cases should be covered properly, and then once you are ready, you can just serve the application once again. So now we can see that pluralization is performed, but if I change this number to maybe 101, it should be updated automatically for us, and the form, this plural form, changes as well. Brilliant. Another useful expression is select. So it allows you to choose one of the translations based on the value. So for example, it's very useful when working with some gender information maybe. So for instance, let's say that we are allowing to display a gender based on the selection, so 0 is male, 1 is female, or maybe there is some other variant, some custom answer, and well, so we're displaying one of those translations here. Let's also provide some additional data to our component, so the gender code by default is 0, but then we are allowing to switch it to any other value, and now we can actually extract those translations for this gender part by using extract. And once again, it is going to create two translation units. The first is for the span tag and for this gender text itself, and the second translation unit is for this select expression. Okay, so now it's done, and now let's copy two translation units. Let's paste those units here, and now let's duplicate this part, and it's going to be our target. So here I should translate only this word, this gender word. This thing, I don't touch it here, but I actually should create this thing here just like this. So it's going to be a target, and then let's translate those gender names just like this, and make sure that you do not translate this other quantifier, because well, it should be left intact. You are translating only those gender names. And then once you're ready, you can actually display three buttons to switch the gender set by the user, for example, something like that, and once again serve the application. And you see that we can switch this gender and it is being updated automatically for us. Brilliant. Another question is, what do we do if we don't have a tag to wrap our text? And well, to translate something without a tag, you should wrap this something inside an ng container. So for instance, we can say something like that, and so ng container is like a no tag, and we mark it for translation just like that. And then once again, you can simply extract this thing, so nothing complex here, as you can see. And the next question is, how do we use Angular pipes in order, to localize our content? And actually the answer is quite simple. We can use Angular pipes, so let's see how to do it. For instance, I would like to localize the current date, so let's say that's going to be today, for instance, so that's going to be the current date, and I would like to localize it. And to achieve that, you can use a date pipe. So to achieve that, you would simply say that's your variable, and then the pipe, and you just say what should be the format for your date. You can use other pipes, for example, currency pipe, decimal pipe, percent pipe, so you can find additional information in the docs. And the final question is, what do we do if we would like to translate something within our components? And to achieve that, you would use the localize method directly. And so, for instance, let's suppose we have this variable, that's the company, and then we have the created by value that should be translated properly using interpolation. And so we use the localize method, and we use those backticks, as you can see. And so then you can easily use this translation inside your component, for instance, here. And if you run the extraction tool, it should detect your texts used inside the components properly. And we can see that's a regular translation unit, but well, make sure to keep this XID tag in place when performing translations. So you translate this part, but this part, it should be left intact So make sure to keep that in mind. And now we can serve the application once again. And we can see that everything is translated properly. Great job. Now the next question is, how do we add a language switcher component? Well, to achieve that, let's introduce yet another variable called Localization. So we should list all the codes and, well, the labels to display. And next, you can simply use ng instruction. For example, here at the top of the page, and we say that we're going to display every locale. So the href should contain the language code, and this thing it should contain the label. But one thing that I have to mention here is that the switcher, well, is not going to work properly in development, unfortunately. Well, so you can click here, but it's not going to work. Why? Well, because we are compiling two different versions of the app for different locales, and that's why it's not going to work. But when the application will be deployed to production, we're going to compile two separate versions of the same app, and the locale switcher is going to work correctly. And for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to use Firebase tools to deploy, to Firebase. Then you can log in with Firebase. Obviously, you will need a Firebase account to proceed. And once you logged in, you can actually build the application by using ng-build, and so it will produce two different versions of the same app for different locales. It is going to happen because here inside AngularJSON we have set Lokalise to true, so it will grab all the available locales. So here is this dist folder, and you can see there are two different directories for two language variants. Brilliant. Then we can actually add this package for Angular to, well, help us with deploying to Firebase. That's actually a very neat package because it does all the heavy lifting for us. And so once the package is installed, you should answer a couple of questions. So you should say which features you would like to use and make sure to choose ng-deploy, so that's hosting. Then choose the account that you have logged in with, and then you have a chance to choose a project, or you can create a new project. For instance, let's give it the following name. Well, the name of the project is the same as the ID, so it's creating a project for you. Then choose an existing hosting site, or you can create a new site, for example this one, and now you are good to go. So all the files and the config is created for you, so you can say ng-deploy, and it will deploy everything to Firebase. So now you can visit this website, and we can see that it is translated into English, and then we can switch to Russian version that is localized as well. But well, there are two additional questions that I would like to discuss. Well, the first problem is that opening this URL will result in page not found because we don't have a root route. And the second question is, what should we do about Angular routing? To take care of the routing, let's create two additional components, maybe home and about. And so we should also import the router module inside app module right here. And then also let's provide the imports part in the following way. So we will have home route, about, and the main path should redirect to home. Okay. Then, you know what, let's actually take most of the content from this thing, except for the language switcher, and let's paste it inside home. Also, let's take this code and place it inside home component, just like this. And well, the app component should contain navigational links to display those two buttons, and also there should be a router outlet, and we are adding a new header. Well, as for the about page, we can simply, provide some kind of a header to make sure that everything works properly. And once again, don't forget to perform the extraction because we have added some new texts. So I'm providing translations for all these new things, also for the about. And so the final thing is to configure Firebase a bit. Let's open this Firebase JSON, and we should update the rewrites section because we would like to deal with the routing. And so let's say that we have two sources for English and for Russian locales, and the destination should be those two files. And the final problem to deal with is, create the root route. And to achieve that, we're going to create a redirect. So the root route should lead to the default version, which is English, and you just provide the HTTP status code here. Once everything is done, you can say deploy. Once again, it is going to compile application for you and deploy it to the same Firebase account. And at this point, I think we are done. So our application is translated into 2 languages. It supports routing. It supports different components. So everything is great. So let's update this page, and we can see that we are redirected to home. Then we can see that's the main page. So this works as well. We can, click about to view the About Us, and we can switch to another language version. Well, it might happen that the previous language version is cached. In this case, you should clear the cache and you should see those links appearing for you. Once again, here it works, so everything is great. And that's it for today, folks. I thank you for staying with me. I wish you happy coding. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, stay localized, and see you in another tutorials.